So we're actually going to go through 5 confident female mindsets, and I'm going to be breaking it down and explaining more as we go along.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the countdown. So number 5 is I am the queen. And the reason why I say that is because, I grew up, in case you didn't understand my accent, in Eastern Germany, right? Actually, communist Eastern Germany, in an emotionally unavailable household. What that translated into was there was no I love yous, right? Or, no hugs. And so because of that, I learned to put everybody else on a pedestal, because I wanted to get the approval, right? I was like, well, wait a minute, a little girl, right, has to believe that the dismissive behavior of her parents is related to her behavior, right? Because then she has that false sense of power that she needs to have to continue to stay motivated, right? So I said, oh, wait, it's my fault. So if I just, be more quiet, or if I'm more patient, right? Or if I'm less outspoken, and I'm sure many women who watch this right now can relate, right? Because they also got neglected, maybe even dismissed, abused. Parents had long working hours, decided, oh, let me focus on the other person. And the reason why I say, look, what you actually want to learn is to step into the queen, which is a healthy self-focus, right? So if you put everybody else on a pedestal, right? If you put a man on a pedestal and you're selling out on your own truth, meaning like, let's say you don't set your own boundaries, right? You're like, oh, it's not that important, right? That he didn't hold the door open for me, or it's not that important that he made a slightly condescending comment to me that actually feels like really uncomfortable and actually kind of unsafe to me. It's okay. I'm probably just exaggerating, right? So we just kind of overwrite our own internal dialogue, right? But a queen doesn't do that. But a queen is actually the healthy balance between what we call here, between the bitch and the doormat. And so, of course, the childhood that I came from, doormat behavior, which means giving everybody else the benefit of the doubt, right? Like being a people pleaser, giving all my power away, right? And what that means is, like, my whole world was just about the man. As a matter of fact, it was like a total codependent party, so to say, right? Calling him five more times, adjusting my response when he didn't reply, over justifying, over explaining, over apologizing. I'm sure you can relate, However, the queen is saying, look, I'm not the bitch, right? Because the bitch is like, well, I don't care. She's totally aloof, ice queen, so to say. But what's nice about the bitch is she has boundaries.
Yes.
And a bitch is also self-focused. Now I'm talking archetypes, right? I'm not talking that you're a bitch, but the archetype of the bitch has boundaries. But you know what? Interestingly enough, when you come from the people pleaser perspective, like I did, guess what? I didn't want to be the bitch, right? I didn't want to be mean, right? I don't want to be rude. I didn't want to be careless. Because guess what? I bet with you anything, that's what your mom or your dad was, right? I had a mom with narcissistic personality disorder, okay? And so because of that, guess what? I made sure that I'm never selfish, right? I made sure I'm never manipulative.
You went to the other extreme. You overcompensated.
You're exactly right, Natalia, right? The pendulum swing, right? That's so classic. Right? But of course, you have nowhere to go, girlfriend, other than to men who disrespect you, make empty promises, right? Don't follow through. And you know what hurts the most? It's after moments where you shared something vulnerable, right? Like maybe you shared like a vulnerable dream that you had, or a vision that you never shared. Silence.
Right.
And he's never texting you back. He may be even going into ghosting. Out of the sudden, there's like a 2-word message every other day. No longer, the paragraphs that you were texting before, right?
Right.
So that's why, so you want to find yourself in the queen, because I always say, look, the queen is either putting herself on a pedestal or she takes the other person off the pedestal. So you can pick. I always say the soulmate is real, but the pedestal you put him on is not. So female mindset number 1 is I am the queen.
Beautiful. Fascinating. Love it. Love it. Love it. What about number 2?
And by the way, the last thing I want to add on is women always tell me, I want to attract this king, right? I want to attract somebody who's set. I want to attract somebody who's in a masculine. I want to have somebody who trusts himself. Well, that's a king. But you know what the king is telling us? Because my husband worked with men for 10 years. He said, you know what? I will treat you like a queen, but you have to know that you are one, right? So a king is not spending his time trying to convince you. Right? It's not like, oh, well, are you sure? Right? Like, oh, today I feel a little fat. And, king, you got to know that you're one, right? All right. So let's go to confident female mindset number 4. And that is, I am safe. Now, as you can imagine, what I've seen with my really successful women all the time, I've myself spoken on hundreds of stages all over the world, Google, Harvard, you name it. So I came across a super successful, highly accomplished women, right? But you know what? Externally, incredibly accomplished. Internally, feeling emotionally unsafe, right? And again, why is that? Well, because they had like an emotionally unavailable parent, right? I went to the wedding of one of my clients, to give you an example, and the mom wrote into the wedding album, right, as the highlight of the whole child's life is when the child became valedictorian of the class, right? So what does it tell you? Well, she grew up in an extremely achievement-focused household. You know what the answer should have been? And Natalia, I'm sure you relate, right? Should have been when she was born, right? When I held her for the first time, you know what I mean? When we had our first daughter, mom, whatever it is, coffee date or something, right? Something emotionally bonding. But she's like, when she was valedictorian, I cried. That's the only time when I cried. And so then because of that, a woman learns not to trust her emotions and doesn't feel emotionally safe. And neither did I. And then, of course, guess what happens? You attract emotionally unsafe men into your life. They also don't feel safe with their emotions. And what does that look like? Well, again, they break promises. They don't trust themselves, which is why they break the agreements, because they don't respect themselves. Or the other way how it can fall is they can look extremely, let's say, feminine, which means they don't have that much drive. Or maybe they are more like an addict, right? Could be an addict like to actually alcohol or drugs. Could be an exercise alcohol addict. Could take on many forms, right? But that's because you're emotionally imbalanced. Guess what? You're going to attract a man who's also emotionally unbalanced, right? So the first goal that I always teach my women is actually breathing into their body, say, I am safe. But after you set a boundary, instead of like being afraid that he's going to yell at you or he's going to tell you, well, who do you think you are? Right? Because maybe that's what your dad did. Right? Or maybe you were growing up in an abusive household, or maybe you were belittled by your mom because she was secretly competing with you because you had narcissistic traits, right? Like it's okay, I'm safe, right? I'm safe to be seen. Okay, very important.
Love it. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We learn how to love with our primary caregivers, so that prime us, that give us an imprint. And if we see that we are attracting relationships that don't feel good, or we are not treated in a way that feels safe in our body, it's very, very smart to go and take a look at that, not from a place of shame or there is something wrong with me, but from a place of, okay, if I want to change something in my life, it's my responsibility to do it. So I love number 2. Number 4, sorry, we are going. Okay,
because that way you pay attention. That's why I do the countdown. You know what I mean? Because otherwise,
you got me paying attention.
But do you want to hear the next confident female mindset?
I'm dying to hear it. Yes.
So confident female mindset number 3 that drives guys wild is I trust. And let me give you, is that just amazing? Is that just amazing? Okay, yeah. I give you a little story. So 2009, yeah, I was dating once upon a time. I've been happily married for 11 years to my dream man, and we have 2 incredible kids. Yeah. But once upon a time, I was dating, and I met this guy online. It was Spiritual Singles. I don't know if that's still existing, by the way. But, he lived in Chicago, and I lived in, I think, LA at the time. And, ladies, what do? Right? We fill in the blanks, right? We create this fantasy, and his voice sounds amazing. And and I loved how he described his world, right? He had a very good way. He had the gift of the gap, if you heard that. The golden tongue, right? Or the silver tongue, I think is what my sense. See, this is, by the way, what happens because I'm from Germany. I always do the wrong translation, so don't bother. You know what I mean? But one night, of course, what ended up happening is, of course, he had more dismissive avoidant attachment style, which means he was starting to withdraw. When he started, we were becoming emotionally more intimate and started to become more connected, talked about all kinds of, more important topics. And I went into complete panic mode, Natalia, like complete panic. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed. It was almost like a panic attack. And I felt like I was in this dark hole, right? And I'm sure some women who watch this right now totally relate to this, right?
Yes.
And I said, what do? I have to do something really extreme because it feels like something is it's overwhelming, right? So I have to do something extreme on the other side. So you know what I did? I realized I don't trust, right? I don't trust that a man is actually going to respond back, that he's going to come back. And that's, of course, because I had abandonment wounds from my childhood, of course, right? And so I decided to write 134 times. I showed it to my women actually in my program. It's true. I trust, right? Because I'm like, okay, my brain doesn't get trust. Like, I don't understand trust. So wrote I trust, put it all over my wall. I'm not saying you have to go to that extreme. Sometimes you have to, because I realized, you know what? My thoughts were so obsessive that I get abandoned, right? My automatic internal dialogue was so like negative that I'm like, I have to counter it with obsession, if that makes sense, right? And
massive action. Yeah, massive reaction.
Until something changes almost, right? Like you write it until you feel something different.
Yes.
And for someone different.
That was great that you did that. That was very, very good. I love it. Good job.
But of course, talking about attachment styles, of course I didn't trust, right? Because I did like an inconsistent caregiver. Sometimes got attention, sometimes I didn't get attention. I remember I was only 18 months old, right? I was 18 months old and I was trying to crawl to my mom's bed. And she rolled over and said, "Stör mich nicht," which means in English, "Don't bother me."
Oh.
And so, of course, because of that, what do you do in that moment? Like, think about it, right?
Yeah, the whole world collapses. Is your life depends on that human being, not only the emotional life, the physical life. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's not good.
Yeah, and obviously I'm on the other side of it, right? But because of that, I made the decision, well, I make sure I don't need anyone. I mean, obviously I couldn't do that at that time, but as soon as I could, I became Miss Independent, made sure I don't need anyone. Look, I went grocery shopping by the time I was 8 years old. By the way, if that doesn't tell you that I had emotionally unavailable parents, at that point it should. Because I don't know if you've seen an 8-year-old, but when my daughter's 8 years old or my son is 8 years old, he's not going to be in a grocery store by him or herself.
Right.
And no, that's not going to happen, right? It's not natural, right? But for me, it was so natural, right? But then again, because of that, I attracted men who are like, "Oh, you don't need anyone. Great. We're a match." Because I don't want you to need anyone because I'm dismissive avoidant. And I don't want you to rely on me. I don't rely on you. We're good. And that, of course, is not true because internally, I wanted the love. I wanted the affection, right? So didn't work out. So really important to say, I trust, right? I trust. Tattooed on you. I'm a tattoo person, but if you are, tattooed on you in your own language, if you can, so that it's extremely meaningful to you.
Absolutely, yes.
It's a powerful mindset shift that when I just do that with my women, it's the nervous system rewires because it's like that's what it is. It's a trust I never trusted.
I think a lot of it is trust, and I think it reflects a lot on us as business women doing this, on the clients hiding us. I believe that's the reason why they are so hesitant sometimes, is because it's the same thing that will give them freedom is stopping them from looking for the help in the right place, because it's about trust.
100%, right? And look, if you don't trust, then you paint the red flags green, and I could go on and on and on, right? Like you override your own instincts. You say, you even see it in reality TV shows where the women have all the men in the world, but she will go for what her imprint is, right? She will go for the man who makes her emotionally unsafe, not the one who's stable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what is number 2?
Yeah, number
Are
2.
Are they in order of importance, or they are randomly? You put a number, or the number is random?
Yeah, no, it's not in order of importance.
Okay.
But a little bit, because I set up the queen and then I talk a little bit like what the queen persists of. So I guess you could say the last 4 after the queen are what the queen believes anyways. So yeah, under the umbrella of the queen, you could see it this way. Under the archetype, which by the way is an energy inside of ourselves. For those of you who are like, what the heck is the queen, right? We have different energies inside of ourselves, right? So anyways, a confident female mindset. Number 2 that drive men wild is I am resourceful. And of course, I know what you want to say. You want to say, I know that. Hello. That's why I'm running my own company. That's why I'm the CEO. That's why I have my real estate empire, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about what do you do when he doesn't text back? Right. Or when you're in the unknown. Or maybe you flirted and you don't know if he feels the same way. Or maybe you're on a first date and you shared something vulnerable that maybe made you feel a little sad. But because you judge your own sadness, because maybe your parents said, when you cried, like, stop crying or I give you something to cry about. Or did they say, this is ridiculous? Or maybe they flat out ignored you, right? You will then project that onto the man, right? So you will actually think, oh, the man is totally judging me for this right now. Oh my God, he probably doesn't want to go on a second date with me. He probably thought like, oh my God, I thought I liked her, but that's a total turnoff, right? What do you do in these moments when you're in the unknown? Because you know what most women do, right? They start to compensate. So compensation can look like, ha ha ha, isn't that funny? But then when a man feels, it's like, wait a minute, I just felt a little sad. Because a masculine man will vicariously live through a feminine embodied woman. So the man will be like, wait a minute, I thought it was some set, but now she's laughing. So is it actually funny, right? Or wait, is she making fun of herself? Wait, should I make fun of herself? Right? And by the way, the confused mind says no. So now the man is going to say, oh, I don't know about that. Let me just kind of think about it, right? And the man back then would tell us, oh, she's great. She's gorgeous. No, we have a lot in common. But there was this like, and, right? Like, I don't know. I kept my finger on it. Wasn't really there. The connection wasn't really there, right? So women oftentimes overcompensate by talking about all of their accomplishments. I talked to this, I worked with this CFO back then of like a Fortune 10 company. And I said, do not talk about all the championships and tennis that you won and try to not talk about your work. And because I knew what she's going to do in golfing, and because I had interviewed the guy, right? And so great guy. He was an engineer, owned 2 homes, settled, but also played in the band on the weekend. So great match, great person. I talked with him, and guess what? I had the exit interview with him after the date. And he said, well, Antia, she's great. She's gorgeous. She's totally my type. We have a lot in common, but I feel like I have space next to her. I mean, she's got it all figured out. I mean, she told me how she won all the championships and I'm like, let's see. I'm like, you're like, female mindset, I'm like, okay, she was afraid to be in the unknown. So this is what happened, Natalia, right? They hit the unknown where probably nobody said something. And she felt uncomfortable with that because what does the brain do if nobody says something in a moment? It goes back to what it always knows, which is self-criticism, self-doubt, self-judgment, right? And that's, of course, unacceptable to a woman who's like really accomplished because it's the opposite of how actually normally her life runs, And so I said, I wish you would have just shared like, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable right now. I feel a little vulnerable right now. Something. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, I told my husband I feel that I wanted to manipulate him, right? Or I shared with him when I felt embarrassment or shame when I got to know him. And I know what you want to say, because you want to say, well, the man is going to say she's too much. Oh, it's too complicated for me. Oh, that's too, I didn't sign up for this. I wanted somebody who's knows who she is. And you know what my husband said? Like he said, well, I asked myself as a man, is this her at her worst, which we all experience worst days, or is that her every day? Right. And once you realize I can actually stabilize myself emotionally,
Right.
because I'm not running away from the very things that I judge about myself. He's like, oh, okay, like I'm actually continue dating Antia, and obviously proposed to her a couple months later, you know.
Oh, that's a one. You make such a beautiful couple. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
But does
sharing.
that make sense? Like make the unknown your friend instead of treating the unknown like your enemy?
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe there is, like you do too, that finding and creating love happens in that age where the comfort zone finishes and the unknown starts, and that's what we do. Many of the things we do, we teach them how to walk on that edge where they don't fall into the panic zone, but they also don't fall into the comfort zone. So that is what being resourceful it's about having like training wheels and being able to, or a stick, and being able to walk that edge that is so scary, but also it's so exciting.
100%, right? And I just want to drive that home with one more story because it's a little bit of a tougher concept to grasp. And so we're talking 2010, Stating the Sky. And he told me one night that I hugged too much or kissed too much, something to that extent. And of course, that's the worst fear of a woman, because what fears do we have? Oh, I'm too much, or, I'm a burden, something along those lines. Now, because I have worked on that resourcefulness, I said, yeah, it's true. Right. So instead of compensating, oh, I'm just joking, the shame shields, right? Brene Brown talks about it all the time. I'm just joking, or it's not that bad, or actually, you're right, I should totally work on that. I said, that's me, right? I advocated for my needs in that moment. And then guess what he did, Natalia? He actually said, oh, no, I was just kidding. Right. So he actually shifted. He actually used what Brene Brown calls his shame shield, right? The shame shield of denial is what he used. And he said, oh, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I love it. I love it. And he actually ended up pursuing me, calling me every day, leaving me voice messages, all the things, which then leads me, by the way, in Confident Female Mindset #1. But just trust yourself, right? Because this man actually made this judgment about me because he felt uncomfortable with that much emotional closeness.
Right.
So he tried to cause a separation, right? So he was actually coming from inauthenticity and fear, and I was coming from authenticity and trust.
Right. He was testing the waters, see what he could get away with. And you showed in your queen energy, and it wasn't manipulative, it wasn't aggressive, it was just, I love Madonna, and Madonna says, this is who I am, like it or not. You can love me or leave me, but I'm never going to stop. And I think that is so valid in the right energy, when we are in the right energy. Because men are going to test. People in general will test. And the first few dates, we are setting the blueprint for the rest of the relationship. And if a man can get away with shaming us on the first date, and we either overdo or run away, he's gonna keep doing it. That's the blueprint. We teach people how to treat us, and the right one is gonna stay, and the wrong one is not gonna stay. And that is a hard truth to swallow sometimes, because I think we are so drawn to everybody liking us. But this work is about liking yourself first, from a place of, of being grounded and centered, and knowing yourself, and not liking yourself in a, oh, I'm so good, I'm so great, I don't do anything wrong. No, but from a place of acceptance, and knowing that if there is something real, we are going to work on it, and we are going to make it better. So anyway, what is number one? I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. You are awesome at this. Number one.
I hope this is valuable for you ladies. So Confident Female Mindset #1 is I am a magnet. Okay. And so why do I say that? Is because a magnet actually draws energy towards you, right? So let's actually break this down, because so most women that come to me do the opposite. right? They are actually providing. I mean, Natalia, I hear stories, women overriding wills, like overriding houses, buying their guys' cars. And because my women are all accomplished. So then we can even go into, well, how do you use your money, right? Because not everyone uses money the same way, right? So the woman uses it again to get approval, right? Like she just wants to feel loved. And she's like, the guy wants to start a company with her, right? But ironically, guess who the main investor is when they start a company together, right? I mean, it's not hard to guess. And of course, it makes the woman feel safe. So it's really about like, if you feel into, I am a magnet, what comes up for you? I would tell you what comes up for most of my women is actually something like a frozen nervous system. There's actually something inside of them that doesn't feel safe to get that much attention, right? They rather want to give the attention on the other person, but they don't want to get all that attention, right? On a nervous system level, because the nervous system level, it feels actually better to have like more like a boundary, like have people like out here, right? Because you know what? Then I can't get hurt.
Right.
Then I can't get disappointed because I would expected it anyways. And I already thought anyways that he's not going to call back, right? I thought anyways, it's a 3-month mark or the 6-month mark or whatever your threshold is. By the way, we have all different vulnerability thresholds with that, right? Then the behavior shifts of the man, right? And so, but invitation is like, I'm a magnet, which by the way also means what I think, what I say, and what I do is in alignment. Which, by the way, then also means that you're obviously not people-pleasing, right? Because people-pleasing means I think one thing, but then I say another because I feel, well, that's not going to be accepted, right? I mean, I can't just set the boundaries here and say, I was not happy with that you didn't call me 2 weeks ago when you landed, even though you said you would, whatever it is, right? So I'm a magnet. It's like really, really powerful. And one way how you can potentially visualize it for yourself is, well, visualize putting a magnet potentially somewhere, maybe in your heart or your throat. So what would it be like, have like that kind of magnetism come to you? What if you felt like, one thing that I would always tell my women, that the man is already around you. The high quality man, the emotionally available man, right? The high caliber man and masculine man, right? He's already around you. Right. But you know what? Your brain deletes and distorts and generalizes reality based on your unconscious expectations. And this is why I want to land this plane here with the mindsets, because the mindsets, they are a direct reflection of your unconscious expectations. So if you shift the mindsets, you don't have to worry so much about strategy. I have women who met somebody at a grocery store, in traffic, at a gas station for a friend. And I'm sure, Natalia, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you've heard similar stories that it's not about strategy or knowing how to set up your online dating profile in the perfect way or get the perfect photos or go to even singles events. You never have to go to a singles event if you're in the right energy.